accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, as enacted to read section G1 MRSA subsection 403A, public proceedings through remote access during declaration of state of emergency due to COVID-19. This business meeting is being held through Zoom, will be recorded, and will be posted on our maranacook.org YouTube channel. So in the public participation section, due to the change in the format of this board of directors meeting, please be aware that during the course of the meeting, the microphones of the viewing audience will be muted except during the identified portions of public comments at this meeting. For today's agenda, this is number 3. There is a chat box feature in Zoom, but we will not be utilizing this function for this meeting. If you have questions or comments that fall outside the appropriate public participation times, please call the central office or email the superintendent or any other board member, and an answer will be provided to you as soon as possible. Again, we ask for the public's patience during these highly unusual circumstances. Any feedback we receive will be used to adjust future meetings to conduct the business of the board of directors and meet the needs of the general public. Thank you very much. And if all goes well, this will be our last Zoom meeting. Any future meetings we should be able to do together as a group, so we will get back to face-to-face. So this will be our last, hopefully our last Zoom meeting as a board, and we'll get back to kind of normal at our future meetings. So because it is a Zoom meeting, attendance and all votes will be done through roll call. So when your name is called, please cast your vote with the 3 available options of yes, which is approve, no, disapprove, or abstain. So I am going to do a roll call vote with the board members right now. And again, please make sure that you can hear each other as we're going through. So I'd ask you to say here as we're going through. So I'll start right away. So Kim.
Here.
Wendy Brotherland.
Here.
Kathy Jacobs.
Here.
Melissa Tobin.
Here.
Alex Wright. And again, he may be in and out, so we'll monitor if he comes in. Patty Gordon.
Here.
Rebecca Lambert.
Here.
Betty Morrell.
Here.
Sean Roderick.
Here.
Gary Carr.
Here.
And David Twitchell. I see David's iPhone.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes. Thank you,
Okay.
David. All right. With that, the first thing up on our agenda is a presentation from Dr. Nancy Harriman. She's going to review the 2019-2020 ESEA grant and the proposed 2020-2021 ESA grant project. This is something that we have to do annually with the board. And I do know she sent out kind of a summary ahead of this meeting for you guys to kind of take a look at, but she also has a PowerPoint presentation that she is going to share at this point as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Harriman.
You're muted, Nancy.
Send her a message.
All right, it's a little tricky here sharing all these screens. Sharing my screen for this, but controlling Zoom at the same time. Okay, now we can go to this.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to give you the annual report on the Elementary and Secondary Education Act funds. And I sent you a summary which will be included with the board notes of the ESEA FY-20 projects. These are all the projects that we were able to fund this past year. And also, I gave you a copy of a sheet that in the header says ESEA draft projects for 2021. These are projects that we're considering including in next year's grant.
Got a little more
Good
there.
evening. I'm here tonight to give, so before you raise your questions about projects we did this year or suggested projects for next year, I thought it'd be helpful to do just a little bit of background on what ESEA is and why it's important. So this first slide is not the most creative photo, I admit, but I love the progression of Crocs from the little kid up to the young adult Crocs with very big feet. To me, this is great representation of how we have a big responsibility to leverage these grant funds to the best extent possible to help our students progress from little Crocs to big Crocs. So what is ESEA? It's actually a law that was passed over 50 years ago in 1965 as part of the War on Poverty. The concept was that all children in America were entitled to a free, appropriate public education. And so sometimes they refer to the different titles within this grant as entitlement grants. But through the years, it's had different names by different administrations. In 2001, it was called NCLB, No Child Left Behind, and a lot of punitive accountability features for states were added. In 2015, it was renamed Every Student Succeeds Act, and it tried to focus more on student success, but retained many of the accountability features. I think that everyone has anticipated that the current administration would probably change the name again. So the Maine Department of Education has continued to refer to it until just recently as Elementary and Secondary Education Act, but you'll also see it referred to as ESSA, E-S-S-A, in some locations. So in math class, my first question to you would have been, which one doesn't belong of these 4 alphabet soups? And the answer would be ESSER, which is the latest addition to the alphabet soup, and it stands for the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. So actually it is not part of ESEA, but we will be submitting a grant on the same platform that we submit our ESEA grants on, and part of how they're determining which schools get the most assistance is by the free and reduced lunch rates or the poverty rates. And so the allocations are similar to how the way we get our allocations for ESEA. And I believe that under ESSER, we're going to be getting about $150,000, for which we have many competing expenses, but Mr. Charette will be reporting on that to you in the future because, as mentioned, it is not part of ESEA. Next, I'd like to cover each of the titles that we currently are funded for, so you understand what some of the constraints are that we have and how we can expend the money. First, Title I. Title I funds are allocated based on free and reduced lunch data, and currently 2 of our schools are eligible for Title I funding, Mount Vernon and Wayne Elementary. Title I also requires family involvement in an attempt to assist families in increasing their capacity to support their children's learning. There's also mandated Title I set-aside for providing comparable services to students who are homeless or foster students if they need additional services like transportation to overcome barriers to participate in educational programs. Title II. Title II funds are primarily for professional learning. For example, consultants to provide professional development or job-embedded professional development, like the Multiple Pathways Project with Rural Aspirations that we've had for the last 2 years. We funded that through Title II, and you recently reviewed a program proposal and curriculum from the high school Marana Cook Alternative Program that was developed through their work in this project. Other things might be inquiry projects, book studies, courses, conference presentations, or attendance to achieve specific district goals. Everything we include in any of these projects has to be referenced to achieving the goals that you have set through the strategic plan. Oh, lest you think I can't count. There's not a Title III listed because we don't have enough English learners to qualify for an English learner grant. You have to have at least 100 students. Title IV. Title IV was introduced a few years ago, and it's tagged as a student support and academic enrichment program. Primarily, they have been funding STEM and technology grants. However, this year we might want to try to do a small project to provide students in rural, remote, and underserved areas with the resources they need to benefit from high-quality digital learning opportunities. A little gem I plucked out of the Title IV descriptor. Title V is the Rural Education Achievement Program. Rural education funding has been redesigned under the current administration, but Title V has traditionally provided grants to rural schools that are either very small or serve a large population of low-income students. Starting in the near future, this determination will be made based on census data rather than school lunch data. And I believe that Maine got some kind of waiver for this year. One important restriction on how we use entitlement funds is that they must be used to supplement, that is, to increase the level of services, not supplant or replace funds from local budgets. Title I funds in particular must be used to supplement, not supplant. For example, in our district, we have been able to gradually build up a team of K-12 interventionists for literacy and math by continuing to partially support interventionist salaries in Title I schools with Title I funding. Last year, we were able to partially support the cost of year one illustrative math materials for students in Title I schools the same way. Title II has the same requirements. For example, Title II projects should not fund mandated training required by law. For example, mandated reporting for child abuse or suicide prevention training. However, the joy of Title V rural schools grants is that they can be used for existing or new personnel to better serve students at risk in small rural schools. For years, we have used Title V funding to help support the salary of a K-5 literacy interventionist in a non-Title I school. But for this coming year, we're exploring the idea of strengthening the consistency and availability of leadership and instructional support in our two smallest K-5 schools, which currently share a principal who bounces back and forth regularly. And please note that even if we were to shift some Title IV funds to Title V, we could also still fund part of an interventionist or another small project, for example, for technology. So in the end, it's all about prioritizing. What's needed the most to supplement our district funds to achieve our district goals? We need your feedback, your input, your suggestions, and we need the suggestions and feedback and ideas that other people in the community want to contribute. So I'd welcome your comments and questions about the projects for this year or draft suggestions for next year, but also anyone who wants to send some feedback via email, that would be great. And if we could have those suggestions for next year by June 17th, that would be helpful.
Okay, sorry that wasn't the smoothest, but it's the first time I've ever done a voiceover. It was kind of an interesting project. So what questions do you have or comments about either projects from this year or potential ideas for next year?
I think you need to concentrate on grades because our grades are low. And I don't think we brought them up at all. And it hasn't helped us to have this pandemic.
That's definitely true. I mean, we usually, when I'm reporting to you later in June, I'm able to give you more student data and achievement scores and things that are in our outcomes for some of these grants. And we don't have that information this year. So that is true, that it's definitely a concern that we don't have that assessment information, and it's going to be a lot harder to do the reporting.
So one of the things I'm going to just kind of jump in, because I do want to draw your attention to it, because it's something we've been kind of batting around for a while, and it seems like we may have found a fit for it. So I would like to, for 2 years, use that Title V rural education funds to potentially hire a teaching principal, or supplement a teaching principal is the way I should probably be saying it, because Wayne really, and this is, Janet has done a fantastic job trying to balance off 2 schools, but especially with COVID-19 and the school closures, I just have some real concerns about being able to have somebody who is on site daily, who can make decisions and help guide kind of what's happening in Wayne. It's really hard for them, even with the lead teacher who does a fantastic job. It's really hard for that lead teacher to kind of have to always wait for Janet to get to school and to be able to have those discussions. And I'd really like to put someone in who can make some decisions and have deeper conversations around teaching and learning that's going on at Wayne Elementary School. So I'm kind of looking at it as a 2-year project, because a lot of the things that I'm hearing is recovery through this pandemic is going to take probably a couple years to get where we need to go. That way Janet can focus most of her energy and time over at Mount Vernon, and we set some parameters for that teaching principal and give them the ability to make some decisions. And it'll also be a good kind of training ground for our potentially future leadership roles in our district. So that's something that I talked with Nancy about and asked her to drop in there. And I just want to kind of draw your attention to it as something that I think would be very beneficial moving forward. Again, I'm thinking 2 years, and at the end of the 2 years, then we can make kind of a decision of if we want to continue or if we are kind of good and we want to go back to just using one principal. But I really think with COVID-19 and the losses and stuff, we really need to have someone in the building at all times who can make some of the decisions and keep an eye on the data and the instructional program over at Wayne. Not that they're not doing a great job. It's just really hard when Janet's bouncing from school to school and they have to wait to get answers, and they yeah. So it would be great to have someone who can lead that within the school. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there and want to make sure people notice that as something that I thought was important, and using some of those Title V funds to be able to do that.
So that's like a 70,000 increase, right?
We'd be looking at more of a stipended position. We're going to draft up a stipended position, and we would draft up the job responsibilities for that. So we're not looking to raise some or put someone on an administrator contract. It would be more of a teaching contract with a supplement for the teaching principal role. The number that I've kind of been using in my head was about $5,000 from that grant, give or take, but about $5,000. Going into next year, you have a little over 11,000 there. So I'd use about 5,000 of that money for the teaching principal is kind of my thoughts there.
What would that person be a full-time teacher and taking on principal roles? And if they do, I mean, I've done that.
Yeah.
And I've also been a teaching principal of 2 schools 20 miles apart. So I know that. And I know that to make it really work, whoever is the teaching principal, whether it's a full-time teaching teacher with principal responsibilities or a part-time teacher with principal responsibilities, having someone who can instantly step into the classroom, whether it's an Ed Tech 3 who could or 2 who could take over teaching at the drop of a bucket, it's important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And we kind of have that, we do have the ability to be able to do that. And obviously it would probably have to be a teacher that's already on staff in the building who'd want to step into that role. And we'd go through kind of a process to make sure we've got the right person stepping into that role. The only certification, there is certification requirements, and there are other things we would have to balance. So like, for example, depending on who the person might be, they need to just have a minimum of 3 years of teaching experience, and they would qualify as a teaching principal. There are other pieces like the evaluation process. They wouldn't be able to do that unless they had taken the supervision and evaluation course. But again, I think we can figure that part out with Janet or maybe even a couple other principals that might be able to help us out with that evaluation process, so we stay consistent with that as well. So there are a few things to work out, and it's kind of in the idea stage. So my first step was bring it to you guys, and then the next step is we'll start to draft up kind of reasonable expectations for the amount of money that we're offering for that position and make sure it meets all of our requirements. So there's still some details to work out, but I thought I'd bring the concept to you first so that we could at least start the conversation and figure out if we want to move forward with it.
How much is the stipend for a lead teacher? Because we pay a stipend for that too, right?
Yes, we do. Good question that I do not know off the top of my head, but I do have the contract. If you give me just a second.
And is the plan to have a lead teacher and a teaching principal, or are we potentially only paying the difference between what we pay for a stipend for a lead teacher now and what would be the stipend for a teaching principal later next year?
If we go to a teaching principal, I think we would be moving away from a lead teacher position because we would have somebody in the building full time there. So hold on just a sec. I've got the contract and I will tell you. The lead teacher. Lead teachers with part-time principals. For next year, it was about $3,800 for the lead teacher.
So really, it's only going to be a difference of $1,200 to have a teaching principal versus a lead teacher?
Right.
That seems like a no-brainer to me.
Depends on what you're asking that person to do.
Right. We do have to make it a manageable position for whoever would be willing to step in. And that's why it's really important to draft up what the job responsibilities would be so that person goes in with eyes wide open so that they know kind of what they're stepping into. I don't want anyone to walk into it and then feel like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. It would be very clear job description. So that's our next step. If you guys are kind of on board with that, that's my next step, is to draft something up, make it manageable, and then I would go to the stage where we would put it out to staff to see if anyone would be interested in it. Ideally, we would like to have someone in place right to start the school year. So
you expect this to happen in August?
it would have, I would actually start working on it now as far as the job description goes, get that taken care of, and then get it advertised probably at the end of June here, beginning of July, give them a time to apply, and then we'd have a little mini interview process for it, so that we make sure we get a good person who knows what they're stepping into.
Again, I can't stress, I'm sorry. I can't stress, I can't stress enough how much that position needs to have someone to support them in the classroom, because even a teaching principal, the most important part of the job is teaching the children. But you get pulled in a lot of directions.
Yep.
So I would like to have an ed tech assigned to that teacher that could take over at a moment's notice.
Yeah, as someone who had a child who had a lead teacher, not even a teaching principal, but a lead teacher when principals were split, that, I mean, the person got pulled out all the time and there was not an ed tech assigned to the classroom, so it wasn't that easy transition that you're referring to, and I agree that's important as well when we consider the cost to make sure that there are really two people in that classroom.
Yep.
I also feel like, having worked in a school where a couple of schools where there was a person who took on a teacher who took on administrator responsibilities with some kind of stipend, but not an administrator's salary, that's kind of tricky. And I just think it's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
It puts a lot on the person.
Well,
And I understand. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. That's it.
If they're not evaluating, that takes off some of that pressure, because you're still a teacher. And it's tricky sometimes to go between administrator and teacher and be a teacher at the same time.
Well, and as you guys are thinking about it, again, I just put it out there because I want you guys to think about it as we get ready to start working on the grants, because we have to write these up. So please, as Nancy said, don't hesitate to give us some feedback about this idea or any other ideas you have going forward around our Title I monies. That's really important. So, you know, I don't want to kind of spin our wheels here too awful long. But at the same time, I did want to draw your attention to that, because that one's kind of important to me, and making sure that Wayne has a little bit of extra during this COVID-19 time. And again, I look at it as 2 years, and then we reevaluate at the end of that 2 years. I don't look at it as this is full time, this is where we're going. This is just kind of a temporary way to kind of give them support through the experiences of COVID-19. I think I saw, was it Sean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I had a question. So I guess to Betty's point, would we have to hire another ed tech to do something like that? Or is there an ed tech in place? And if so, what would that ed tech be taken away from to make this happen?
Yep, that's all part, Nancy, you want to answer that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate all of you who've offered good input on this. Some of you have been in this situation, and there are definitely ways to make it be more effective. I mean, the whole point of putting this into the entitlement grants is it has to help the situation in Wayne, where we've had so many new teachers. Every year I go to evaluate their data, and like half the teachers are new in the building. That's really tough. So we would need to look at how we're using other entitlement funds too, like Title I money for ed techs. We can't fully fund an ed tech who's just there to support a principal, but we can and have partially funded ed techs to provide specific kinds of instruction for students who are very needy in that building. So I think that we could work across the titles to make sure, we would have to make sure that it is coordinated and the supports are in place so that it's truly having the benefit to the students in the school that we want it to. It can't just be logistical.
No, and that was the point that's the point I was trying to make is if we're going to take an ed tech away from students just to assist, I don't know. And that's tough for me because I know, especially with COVID-19 and students going back to school in the fall, there's going to be a lot of struggling students.
Right, and that's our point, I feel like, which I think is what Mr. Carr was referring to, is that all of our projects need to be very precisely focused on addressing the learning needs of all of our students next year, because we're probably going to have a wide range of diversity in terms of student needs, and we need to be helping teachers with professional development on how to meet that wide range, and we have to be using any support staff like an intervention or educational technicians to also help alleviate those gaps. So that definitely needs to be a focus, I agree, of any of our Title I, Title II, or these Title V funds we're talking about.
Patty, I thought you had your hand up as well.
I do, and that was what Nancy just said was the perfect segue. Can I switch from your suggestion, Jay, of this, which I think is a really great idea, just to another thing, which is, this is a question, I guess. Nancy, you asked what would be a good thing to do with the grant or possibilities, and with all of the transitions and grief and anxiety and everything everybody is facing, is there a way to have any of these titles cover some additional mental health or social emotional learning stuff that students and potentially staff too will need? Because that is going to be something that everybody's going to need everywhere. I don't know if that's, so the question is, I think we are going to have to address this in our district like everybody is, because it's going to be enormous, the sort of mental health needs that come when we come back together. Is there any place that in the either the ESSER or the SEA that can, where we can look into giving some support to that? That was a question.
Great question.
So
I think that is the question, because we can't fund a lot of new staff through those other titles for all the reasons that we talked about, but certainly that ESSER money could be used for some of that, but we only have a fairly limited amount to spend over a couple of years. So I think we're going to have to look at also how within each school can we support the staff we do have and make sure that they have whatever programs or resources they need to provide for students, so that's more might be more professional development and rearranging maybe how we're using some other district budget monies to make sure that we're doing the staffing we need to.
So what's an ed tech cost? Jay?
I should have been ready for that answer. I don't know, Bridget, if you can help me out with that.
An ed tech with benefits, probably roughly 33, 34. I think I muted myself at the end of there. About 33 to 35,000.
So the 38,000 to put a lead teacher is not the full price.
No, that's only $3,800 for the lead teacher. That's like a stipend.
3,800.
Right.
So you're not giving them a full job. It's just a part-time job.
No,
Well, they would
they're
actually pull a regular teaching load. So they would be picking up the teaching principal part as kind of an extra on top of that.
I don't think that's going to work, Jay, because that's unfair to do both. And I go back to what Betty says, you're going to have an ed tech there be on board. And if you're paying $35,000, I don't know. I just, somehow it doesn't add up to me. There has to be a better way to go about that. I'm going to think about it.
Sounds good. I'm up for anything. I think that's David's got his hand up.
Yes, I much appreciate the idea of helping Wayne and Mount Vernon in this way to give them more stable supervisory support. And I would trust you folks in the administration and the teachers to figure out whether that stipend is enough, whether the support would be enough. Part of what I expect is already being considered and just would want to know had been considered is, are we taking away by using that much of that title money that is available for this, are we taking away from what other things are we taking the money away from? Or it seems that this seems to be what you feel would help most using what we have. And so I'm glad to go with that, but that would be my concern, as we all do in our decisions like this. If I'm using this for this, what am I not going to be able to afford?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a fast idea, Jay. One of the thoughts, you got 7 kids going over to Reed Field. You bring those 7 kids back, and that ed tech could maybe help out the lead teacher a lot better and utilize the funds better. You might want to consider that.
Yep, I just wrote that down.
I mean, it makes more sense to leave the kid in Wayne and move him on. That's just a fast little thing. I mean, otherwise, I don't know how you can justify what you're asking for. In the long, not in the short term, because you got funds coming in through Nancy. But in the long term, you need to look at the total cost to your budget. But that would help justify part of this problem.
All right, good comment.
So we done with this?
Unless there's other comments, I'm looking to see if anyone's got their hand up. Oh, I see Rebecca's hand up.
I just wanted to add that I think that it's a good idea with everything going on, that there is a presence in Wayne 100%. I think that is a good idea. But I do have a concern about putting a teacher in that kind of leadership role and with just barely a stipend, you know, to increase their salary. It just doesn't seem like to make them have that much responsibility in addition to their teaching role. Financially, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it. But I think it's a great idea and it should be pursued.
I will keep
Maybe
on it with all the comments that you guys shared for sure, because I think they all are very good comments, and it's in the infancy stage, so that's why I wanted to draw your attention. So I appreciate the comments that you guys all shared here, because they all are very important moving forward. All
Okay,
right.
moving forward.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Nancy. Citizens' comments. I can't tell.
I'm checking to see if there's any hands being raised, and I don't see any unless I'm missing something. I think we're good.
Additions and adjustments to the agenda by the board
Gary?
or the superintendent.
Kathy?
Yep.
I don't know if this is the right time to do this or not, but we had talked at our last meeting about summer meals. And I was hoping that we could get some information. And I know, Jay, you sent me some information, but I don't know if the whole board received that or not. Just about how the decision was made to not continue it. And I'd like to know if there's any indication about how likely it is that the food banks are going to be able to step in at the same level that we were able to do that. So I don't know, Gary, if that's a discussion, if that's an agenda item. And then I have one other thing, is about the plan for going back to school in the fall. I know that Jay's pulling a team together to work on that, and I'm just wondering if the board's going to have a chance to talk about that or have any input, and if when final plans are developed, if we need to vote on it, or where does that all stand? Because it seems like it's coming up fast that we have to make a decision. So I don't know if those are two new agendas, or I don't know what to do with that.
It's probably worthwhile to just make H a discussion about summer meals, or excuse me, K, sorry, make K a discussion about summer meals, and L as just a brief discussion about reopening and what the plans are looking like and where we're going.
Okay, that would be good.
So the other thing that has to come up is we were going to meet in the summer. That was one of the decisions that we looked at, Jay and I believe Wendy was in that meeting. And so have you thought about that anymore? Hello, Jay.
Yep. So yeah, we definitely are going to have to meet. I figured we would set that date after we knew how the budget validation referendum was going to happen. So I'm just kind of waiting on that, and then we will have to have a meeting in July for sure. But I think it'll be after that budget validation referendum goes through.
So that meeting is going to be in the gym, like normal.
Yes, yeah, yep.
So next meeting, all the board will be at the gym with the public.
Yeah.
Very good. And we, at that meeting, one of the things that was not in this packet, unless I missed it, was the lighting contract.
Yeah, for the fields.
Yes, we need to have that approved immediately for you, because that has to come up. So that has to be done on the 17th.
Got it.
That's a construction project. All right, seeing any other questions, we'll move on. Reports, go ahead.
So again, guys, just for the sake of brevity a little bit, if you've got any questions about any of the reports that were in the packet, moving through, if you don't mind asking me, and then I'll, as necessary, divert them to the appropriate person here. I know there was pretty hefty reports this time, so there was a lot of information in there. So just wave your hand if you got any questions, and we'll get them answered for you.
So.
Yep, of course.
So if we look at Dr. Conway's report, I thought it was fantastic to see Emma Hagenars, might not pronounce that right, valedictorian.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I can't believe it. And then we also had the child, Wyatt Cannell, that got the AA degree for Thomas College. I think that's great. I have yet to sign any papers, Jay.
Yep, I've got them sitting on my desk. They're ready for you, when we can schedule a meeting for you to come in and get those.
Okay.
They are ready.
That's good news. Well, I mean, we got it for graduation it's next week, right?
Mm-hmm.
You graduate. So you're going to pass them out with the degree. The other thing, there was 3 programs that I noticed on another report. Oh, the other thing is, we always have all the things that happen in our school. We give out all these great things. But what about the kids that do CATSI for industrial arts? Do we ever get any certificates for those kids? I mean, I have yet to see one since I've been on the board.
So
And I
that,
think it's, we need to start identifying what these kids are doing.
Yep.
I mean, they lose 2 hours a day, but I just think that we should do something about that.
Mhm.
There's another side of this coin, you know?
I think that, do you mean at graduation, Gary?
Yes. In other words, you know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
Cassie does, I mean, those kids are doing on the other, they're not, they're going to be in the production world. And we never talk about them.
I feel like there have been talked about at graduation in the graduations that I've been to, but I don't know if that's a regular thing or not, but
Yeah.
probably Dr. Conway knows.
Yeah.
Dr. Conway?
Right. Yeah, right. If I could just jump in, you know, we do talk about CATSI students, and we could certainly probably do it more, I'm sure. They're recognized, you know, throughout the year, but I think, you know, the specific focus is with graduation. We recognize them in the program for graduation, and they do get different awards at graduation, but they don't come to the board level, and that's something that we could, you know, we could change with certificates if that's.
Yeah, I think they should get a certificate so that they can put it up on the ball too.
Sure.
I mean, that's important. And that would say, hey, that we need an industrial arts, what we could do with it, you know?
Okay.
That's what my thought is. The other thing is, I don't understand Dreambox, Lexia, and eSpark.
Nancy, do you want to tackle that one?
I don't know, they're under
Oh,
Jeff Boston's report. He talks about them, but it doesn't say what they are.
Well,
so,
I'll just say that they are all online instructional programs. Dreambox is for mathematics for K to 8, and eSpark and Lexia are reading and phonics skills, and they were programs that is part of the last 2 3-week periods. Once we made sure everyone in K-5 had technology, they were a resource we could offer to families so kids can get on whenever it's convenient for them, and they can work their way through different levels, and the program tracks their progress, assesses and places them according to how well they're performing in the program. So they're pretty well designed programs. And I'll let Jeff comment. I don't know what else you had in your report, Jeff.
So do we pay for those, Nancy, or not? Are they free?
Maybe Diane wants to take that question because they're not usually free, but this spring they were.
So with the COVID-19, those 3 companies actually stepped up and offered free accounts for our students. Those were companies that we were using for RTI students or special ed students as well. So we had a base of students that were using them, and they aligned with our curriculum and our instruction practices. So those were choices that we made as a district to move forward with. We're in the process right now of negotiating to see what the price would be to continue on with these programs for our students. So we hope to be able to report how and if we move forward with them.
May I just say also that just recognize that the elementary reports are not just from Jeff Boston. I think that Janet and Abby also contribute to those principal reports.
It's written right on the top, those three names. for that
Yes.
report.
But you only mentioned one.
I just wanted to add those three programs are, I know my son uses them every day. They're great programs, and anything we can do to continue those on. I know he's very disappointed that they are going to end. He's talked about they're going to end, and it's a routine, not just him. We've talked to other parents as well who it's become a routine. I mean, we don't even have to ask him. He knows. He gets on, he does his time. We've asked, I've gotten some feedback. So anything we can do to keep those going through the summer, if there are funds available. We've heard from multiple, reached out to other classmates and stuff whose parents would love to have those available for their children through the summer. So thank you for choosing those, and hopefully there's something we can do to continue on using those.
Yeah, and just to answer that very quickly, Sean, we are trying to get that figured out right now. So you must have been reading our minds or something, because we've been having those discussions of how do we continue those programs, because we have gotten such positive feedback from it. So thank you for saying that.
So is under Ryan's report, he also asked, says that online learning platforms are adaptive in nature and allowing student to work independently. So are those the three programs that he's referencing, or is that a different program?
Not eSpark, but Lexia and Dreambox. Lexia we've been using for numerous years. I think we sort of started that within the district, and then it's branched out a little bit. So we have a set number of licenses that we use for students who receive special education services. We've had those for many years. Actually, the contract that, if we do extend it, would be already under an umbrella that we have in place currently. Dreambox we started using, I think, 3 years ago, and then did that particularly for students with IEPs and then also students in RTI services. And being adaptive in nature, they are quite helpful. They do placement assessments, and then they also, if used properly, it's important that other siblings who might want to help or parents don't help, because if you artificially increase your level, it resets the bar for what it says a student can do. So it does allow you with a fair amount of flexibility in terms of being adaptive in nature. And the students really seem to engage in them. They seem to be developmentally appropriate at the different levels. And Lexia does go all the way up to middle school, high school students. There's a different version called Power Up at that point too. And so there's some really good learning tools for that. So we've used that for a number of years, and it was tailored in a lot of ways to have to do some remote learning or distance learning stuff. So we plan on using that still over the summer for some students, but we have a secure contract that goes at least till 2021 with them.
Fantastic. So that would sort of help Sean and his son and others because of the problems that we have this summer.
Well, like I said, we only had a specific number of licenses to start, and they offered free licenses that we expanded to the K-5 group. So the students who were initially brought on during the closure of the pandemic, not all students would continue with that set number of license unless we, and that's the negotiation that Jay and Diane are talking about, is trying to see if we would be able to expand those. It's nice that they offered it free, and that was great. It's also great for them because they're trying to lock in new customers moving forward. And there is a cost to those things. So it's not, it's certainly a consideration too. It's not a cheap amount of money to be able to procure those licenses. So there does have to be some thought to that, I think.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for Jay to get some money.
Well, and I think, these budget times are something that we're thinking long and hard about. We're also collecting feedback, not only from our teachers, and we're getting it from this board, but we'll be surveying parents this week and also collating that information. But again, we know that budget times are tough, and we're trying to make the best decisions that we can moving forward that will have the best impact. And so you know, we're very conscious of that and trying to do the best we can with what we have. So, and there's a lot of competing things. It's not just, you know, online programs that are hitting this budget. There's a lot of things hitting this budget. And so we're just trying to get the biggest bang for our buck.
Do those programs track how many hours a child spends doing it in terms so that we would know what percentage of the population truly spends a worthwhile amount of time on it to determine how many additional licenses, I guess, whatever they're called, would be worthwhile versus getting one for everybody?
Yeah, and you also, it does, I mean, they are adaptive in nature, so they can be fairly independent, but they do take, it's important to monitor them too, because, you know, students can get stuck in a cycle of being placed at a level that may not be appropriate or being moved to a level and they would need some sort of teacher instruction or intervention. So that's also an important component when making sure that it's going to be not frustrating for them or for their parents. So it does take a level of staff engagement to be able to make sure that their progress continues to go in the right direction. But you can keep track of hours, they set goals. I mean, the real nice thing is it's packaged in a lot of ways. So it gives you some research-based time intervals that you should be doing per week over the summer to maintain skills. And it gives some good goal setting measures for students, but for parents too. So I would agree with what Sean's saying. It does seem to be motivating. It does seem to be structured, and it, you know, for younger kids too, it's something that is surprisingly independent once they get used to it, which a lot of this stuff that's an important thing when you've got a few kids who are trying to keep engaged at that level independently.
Can you get the cost, Jay, by next meeting?
For,
What we're talking about?
oh, yeah, yep.
That makes sense to me, to have something like that.
Yep.
That would even help out normal teachers. You could put them on that and say, this is what you need to start on as an independent, and they might get more out of it.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, or are we staying on
I
anybody
just had a
else?
quick question or comment, I guess. Jay, is that something we could use? I mean, this is COVID-19 dollars for if we get them, because I mean, it's into the future. We may have to do online learning, but we don't know what that's going to look like. So
Yes, we're starting to talk about those funds and about that money that Nancy referenced earlier, but it would fall squarely in that. So that's why we're trying to make the best use of those dollars, and we're trying to get the best deal we can from the companies as well. Diane's worked really hard, you know, with them. So that's what we're working on. We're trying to do it as quick as we can.
no, thank you so much.
Yep.
Any further comments? Moving on to the action items.
Do you want to, Gary, just very quickly, there's the curriculum, facilities, and policy minutes are in the packet, but I don't know, Wendy and I talked briefly about her giving just a quick summary of the curriculum meeting. So if you're okay with her doing that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Most of the curriculum was in the packet. The curriculum committee met on May 20th, 2020, starting at 4:00 p.m. Everything we discussed is in this week's packet, plus the questions that were asked are also written down in Dr. Harriman's minutes for the board. We looked at the curriculum review cycles and watched a presentation presented by Abby Schenk and Jeanette Jacobs. The information about the NWEA was enlightening, and we thank our math and literacy coaches for taking the time to put this presentation together for us. So thank you so much.
Good. I think it was Alex that reports out on facilities, but he unfortunately wasn't able to attend. So the minutes are included there as to what is still ongoing work. Sean is going to continue to be very busy this summer. So
But he is going to take a vacation.
Yes.
And we have policy too.
And then we have Patty, I don't know if you want to talk about that briefly.
Policy committee is also in your packet, and we're going to talk about the action item in the action items, which is just that there's a second reading, but it was the fastest meeting I've ever been in, I think. And we briefly discussed the amending the policy for the timing of when the class of 2020 could use the funds that they've raised. And then talked a little bit more about the first read of the policy that we're going to talk about in the action items. And pretty much that's it.
Thank you, Patty.
That's it.
There we go. On to number 6.
There we go.
I
Wendy.
move to approve the minutes of May 20th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Kim,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Abstain.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
John,
John?
Oh, yes, yes. Sorry, I didn't hear you say anything.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
And it passes with, make sure I'm counting right, 10 approve and 1 abstain.
Wendy?
I move to accept the donations.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Kim,
Our community is amazing. Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
And it passes unanimously.
Ready?
Wendy?
I move to authorize the superintendent to award the bid and sign the contract with All States Asphalt, Inc. for the paving project at the bus garage in the amount of $116,395.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just,
Yeah.
unless it was a typo, I just had a question. Sorry, I lost so many pages here. There was BNS or something was $6,000 cheaper. I was just curious why we went with the other.
Yep, so that's a really good question. When all the companies did a walkthrough with Sean, they do a walkthrough so that they know what the project is going to entail. There were some addendums that were made at the walkthrough, and BNS Paving did not include the addendums. We actually contacted them to see if it included the addendums or did not, and they said it did not. They resubmitted and they came in. They weren't the lowest at that point once the addendums were added in. So that's why we're going with All State Asphalt.
Roll call vote.
All righty. Kim,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously.
I move to authorize the superintendent to award the bid and sign the contract with John Cushing Construction for the concrete slab at the bus garage in the amount of $18,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
I just had a question. What? There was only one bid. He was the only one who submitted.
There was only one bid.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just,
Yeah,
I look at a lot of contract stuff and find that interesting, but
yeah. We were a little shocked as well, so, all righty. So Kim,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Sean,
yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously.
I move to accept the nomination of first probationary contract teacher, MCHS in English, Catherine Jones.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a question under the salary. It says MA 9 years experience. Where did the, maybe I'm missing something. These are my first ones, but where do her 9 years of experience come in if she got her education degree in 2017?
That was
Or is
her
it-
master's degree she earned in 2017. She'd actually been
She
a
actually started teaching in 2000 and
yes.
after her 2011. Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Of
Roll
course,
call vote.
I got it, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Did you say yes?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Is this a motion to approve policy?
Yep.
Go ahead and give a motion. I
Yep.
motion to approve policy GBEBB, staff standards of conduct with students.
Second.
So I have one comment on that, Jay. The union, when we were in that discussion, and I had that on there, and it, right after on page 2, under G, where the sentence got moved up.
Yep.
I understand where it's placed, what it means, but I was under the impression that the union wanted to make sure that that applied to all. And so I said applies H to L, so that you don't have any problems with the union. You know, it's a simple thing. It does mean that, the way it's written, but you just might want to avoid any troubles.
Got it.
Any further comments? Roll call vote.
So this would be as amended to read applies H to L. Just want to
Yeah.
make it clear to everybody.
Yep.
Okay, so as amended then with the addition of applies H to L. So,
Yeah.
all righty. Kim,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and David.
Yes.
This passes unanimously. Thank you.
Everybody is happy on that one, Jay. 3 months.
Yes.
Okay, report on the June 17th annual meeting.
So just very quickly, from my understanding, there is an executive order that is coming very soon that would take the annual meeting that we're scheduled to have for the budget June 17, and it would be taken straight to referendum. So there is a high possibility that we will be canceling that meeting and the budget will be going directly to the voters at the poll on July 14. However, we don't have that executive order yet, so I'm proceeding right now as if we're going to have the meeting June 17. If that changes, I will reach out to you guys immediately so that you know the content of that executive order, so that you guys feel prepared if community members are asking you kind of what's going on. Part of that executive order, from what I'm hearing, is we may have to rewrite the warrants, and they're going to give guidance on how to do that. So there's a little bit of work that's going to happen, but at this point, we're moving forward as if, until we get that executive order, we're moving forward as if we're going to have that meeting on June 17, the annual meeting. So it's one of those kind of wait and see things, but we're just going to proceed like we're getting ready for it. So I know Sean, Diane, myself, we've already had a meeting to start to prepare for it if we get to that point that we actually hold the meeting. So
you still have to have a meeting, Jay. You got to get that approval from the board to put up those lights for the
yes,
trap.
yeah, no, I will have a special meeting for that. Absolutely, yes. Haven't forgotten that. Wrote that down.
If there's no annual meeting, will we have a Zoom board meeting?
We could potentially, for that special, if we're just doing the lights, we potentially could do that if that's the wish of the board, just to save everyone the travel time and such. Yeah. But I'll
That
reach
would help me.
once we get to that point so that we can make sure we plan appropriately.
So
Okay,
Jay, when you say that you're proceeding as if we're going to have one, where doesn't a paper or something go out?
Yes.
Like,
So,
is that part of that, or is that still
yeah,
like?
so it's all ready at the printers.
Oh, okay.
And we've been working with the printer to try to delay as much as we can so that if we need to make changes to the warrant articles, we're able to do that. So
Okay.
we're working with the printer and we're kind of delaying things as best we can. But at some point in the next several days, if we don't get that executive order, we will have to send it to the printers and get it out. But we're doing the best we can. But you're exactly right, Kim. There is a paper that's going to go out. Good question. So
Okay,
I will
Wendy,
post it.
go ahead. Betty?
What changes would have to be made if we don't have that meeting, but shouldn't that paper go out anyway? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So
Okay.
So if we don't get anything, we're going to send to the printers and that paper will be out before the June 17 meeting. If we can make changes and we only go to the 14th, then we'll do that. There's also a provision in that executive order that there be, from what I'm hearing anyway, and again, this isn't all fact, this is just stuff I've heard from different sources, is that we would have to have a public participation period where the public could ask questions. So we would probably go through some sort of little presentation to review the high points of the budget and give the public a chance to ask questions. But there would be no vote in that particular piece. But again, that's all stuff we're hearing may happen. We're not sure. So as soon as I hear something, I will let you guys know for sure.
I have a question. If we do hold the 17th meeting, won't we be getting scripts too? Because we all ask different questions.
So,
correct?
Yep. So what we're doing to help that along, we already talked to the moderator. It would be, we were planning on having Dick Spencer from Drummond and Woodson be the moderator again. And I asked him, just for the sake of making sure everything runs the way it's supposed to in time, I actually asked him to be the one to read the motions this year. This would be just for this year if we get to that point. So I thought that would take a little bit of the complexity out of it if we just had the moderator being pretty straightforward with reading the motions and then taking the vote.
Thank you. Move on to H.
Move on to 8.
I move to authorize Superintendent Charette to file the proper and necessary application forms to participate in any and all selected federal programs for RSU 38 and otherwise act as the authorized representative for and on behalf of RSU 38 for 2020 through 2021.
Second.
Any discussion on the item?
So for the new board members, just so you know, this is just an authority that the board grants to me through the summer months, and it's only in effect during the summer. So just so that you know, for those new people.
I was curious about that. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, running the vote then. Kim.
Yes.
Wendy.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Betty.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
And David.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously.
I
Wendy,
move to authorize Superintendent Charette to hire and accept resignations in consultation with the chair or vice chair during the summer.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
And again, just for the new members, it's just something that is there for the summer. So resignations and hires, I will communicate with the chair and the vice chair, and I'll keep you abreast over the summer because we don't have meetings. Okay, so Kim.
Yes.
Wendy.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Betty.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
And David.
Yes.
And that motion also passes unanimously.
I move to accept the nomination of first probationary contract teacher for MCHS in French, Kristen McLaurin.
Second.
Any questions?
Just a second, I'm sorry, I put my head down.
Kathy.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. All right, Kim.
Yes.
Wendy.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Betty.
Yes.
And Sean.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
And David.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, now we go back to
Summer
the
meals.
question.
Summer meals, yes. Kathy, do you want to start at all?
Yeah, I just had some questions about how the decision was made to not do summer meals. And then you had said something about the food banks were going to be able to take on the family. So I'm just wondering if where that is at.
So I did, I talked with Jen Hall, our new food service director. Also talked with Bridget because we wanted to kind of take a look at what is the, you know, we wanted to look at the big picture, including the budget and where it falls. Jeff worked really hard at keeping our program in the black, and we're going to have a few struggles, and I think a lot of it has to do with COVID-19 of getting back into the black, and it may take a little time to do that. But in talking with Jen, she, at the height of this, we were kind of serving almost 180 meals out of the high school and Mount Vernon Elementary School. And we had applied for a special summer program to be able to do that. So they did extend it through June 30th, but the meal counts have slowly been declining over the past couple weeks. I asked Jen it was either last Friday or Monday, what her most recent count was, and it was at about 100. But she was expecting that was going to drop this week and probably even a little bit more next week. And in talking with Jen, she also made the point to me of, like, is that an efficient use of our staff in serving less than 100 meals? It seems like the output and budgeting for staff to be able to do that, to continue the program, that's not something we had planned on doing. So there's a trade-off. It's like anything else, there's a trade-off. We were talking about trying to make good use of our time. So in talking with Jen also, she mentioned that if we continued on, we actually would have to send the people who were doing, I say send them, they'd have to do an online training to be able to continue the summer program, which we haven't ever done before. There's, you know how it is, it's federal requirements. You got to have certain trainings and such. So there was this kind of give and take. So in talking with Jen, she also brought up that the state is working on getting I think it's called the EBT program, where any student who's identified free and reduced would actually get a card and get the price of a meal on that card so that the family could buy groceries and stuff. So there are programs out there that we can help get people to. I know the food pantry as well at our school has done an amazing job reaching out to families. So again, if we know they need it, we will make sure that they can get food. We're going to take care of our people and our families here for sure. So I think there's ways to do it. And also the other piece is, and I given a shout out to them, the food service staff has worked consistently right through vacations and stuff, right through April vacation. They've been very consistent. They worked really hard. And I do think that group of people is tired right now. So I also want to make sure we're treating them respectfully too, and not just mandating that they have to do this. So a lot of little pieces in play, but Jen Hall was very, very good at doing her homework about the give and take of this. And I really very much trusted her on what was the best course of action. So I give a shout out to her because it was a tough decision all the way around. If even one kiddo in our district is hungry, that doesn't feel good to me, but as long as we know, we will find ways to help them. There are programs out there, so.
And Kathy, if it makes you feel any better, the food pantry, I can't remember what the total was. I think it was like $20,000 that was raised. So we were originally we are keeping up with our Friday pickups. And originally there was going to be a 2 to 3 week time frame where to get through, I think the lunch program, maybe I'm wrong, Jay, was supposed to go until either the 5th or the 12th. And we were going to pick up with Friday food pantry on July 10th because July 3rd holiday weekend obviously happens to be a Friday, and the food pantry actually put together a schedule to be able to do rate starting June 19th. So there won't be any lapse. So they'll be able to continue to get Friday pickups if they want to, and there are people who are willing to drive to houses to drop off as well.
That was going to be my question because my food pantry, we have probably doubled or tripled the number of deliveries, people not able to get out or because not feeling well or just not feeling comfortable getting out. And so we are, I didn't know if there was an option for deliveries.
Yep, they've been doing deliveries all along since this started, and my understanding is as long as they reach out and say that they want to continue deliveries, that there are volunteers who have agreed to be able to do that with whatever legal requirements are necessary to be able to go to a house, so on and so forth.
Yeah, good.
And I would encourage anyone, if you hear of a family who's struggling, and several of you guys have done that, teachers did that through the course, let us know and we swing into action pretty quick. We've got a really good team here. So all we got to do is know, and we'll make sure we get them taken care of.
Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate that. Sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, no. You can finish.
I just wanted to say thank you to Jay for really looking at all the pieces before making that decision. It sounds like it was probably the right one, as long as those people are still being fed and kids aren't going without meals. I think, you know, that probably was a decision that was hard, but I think it was probably the right one.
I guess I want to add that when it comes to the meals, I did a lot of research on this, and I'm not going to bore everybody, but there are ways we could partner with other schools to provide kids lunches and partner and have them brought to places where they're accessible, because it's proven that not all families, just because you're in need, when you have to show that you're in need, people don't come get those meals. And when you have the summer lunch program, any kid can go get those lunches, and those lunches and those meals are accessible to any child, regardless of income. It happens in a lot of areas, like in Augusta, for example, the lunches get brought to the Y I know in Winthrop, they get brought to the beach, so they're accessible to all children, and some children are going to suffer because of this. So, I mean, I think the right choice probably was made with the timing, but I would like to, I'd be willing to volunteer to help work on in the future so that we can provide lunches in the summer, because yeah, it may be only 100, but 100 families, I don't believe are going to go to the food cupboard. And it's kind of like the example when I talked to the Department of Education, it's why you don't have, when I was in school, you had white tickets if you were free lunch, blue tickets if you paid for lunch. And then in high school, when you were aligned, you had to say free or reduced. There's a reason why they've done away with all that, because there's families that didn't want to apply for free school lunch. And I appreciate all the work, and I know our district does a great job at providing that kids are fed. But there's 100 kids that are coming to get lunches for a reason, I believe. So I'll leave it at that for now, but I would like to work in the future, because we could partner with Winthrop or Augusta, and we already have some type of agreements in to go pick up those lunches. It could be even with rec departments could go get those lunches. That is allowed if they go through the training. And I know churches who do that as well.
Yep. There are churches and other organizations that put together knapsacks for kids, which Good Shepherd would help with. And every Friday or whatever day, one day a week, they would pick up a knapsack for the summer, where they would have food in that knapsack to help cover. A lot of churches pick up that responsibility, or clubs. There are also clubs like the Boys and Girls Club in Gardner provides free lunches. They provide free breakfast and lunch to the kids in the Gardner area. And I don't know, in the future, there might be an organization that might want to pick up that kind of a responsibility. Couldn't be picked up right now at this time, but Winthrop the Winthrop Food Pantry puts together knapsacks for kids already. So that would be a good place to get some information about that.
Right. But what I was saying,
Mount Vernon Food Cupboard might be able to pick something like that up too.
Right.
Is these lunches are actually, in the research I did, actually is made by the schools, and these organizations come pick them up from the schools to make sure they get distributed.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah. You have to have a certain percentage of students receiving free and reduced lunch to be able to offer that.
Nope, that is correct, but you can team up if you don't qualify with a school district that does. So we could team up.
Absolutely.
With
Yep.
We will definitely follow up on that. Thank you, Sean, for bringing that up.
And I'm willing to help with that because this is passionate about it.
Gotcha. Good.
What was the other item?
The
Reopening?
opening was the idea, concept.
Fall.
Yeah.
Fall reopen.
Question,
I
right?
understood that it was what is the role of the board in the conversations about reopening? Is that what it was?
That was, yep, that was a piece of it. What is our role?
So that's a good question. I'm proceeding forward with kind of what I had laid out with you guys before. We're putting the committees, kind of subcommittees together and stuff. I would feel more comfortable if I brought you guys forward the information. We're going to have various teachers on there, administrators on there, other staff working through. Some of the managers will be part of that too. And again, we're looking at those basic things of the basic needs, the connectivity piece, the social emotional piece, because that I think is going to be much bigger than people are expecting it to be. I really do. And then of course the academic piece is that fourth pillar, and that's a really huge pillar too to work on. There's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done around that. So kind of my plan, and you guys correct me if you want to be involved further, was to get those committees going, put people together, start the work. My goal was to get through graduation next week and then start the work of those committees moving forward, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done and we are going to have to move fairly quickly. I also think there's going to need to be once we start to make decisions, we are going to have to do a lot of communication, not just at the board level, but with the communities and the families, so people feel safe, coming back to school, whatever that looks like right now. So go ahead.
I didn't hear you say anything about any kind of parent input in any of these meetings or anything. I think, because I'm starting to hear from parents, are we going back to school? What's going to happen? So I just wonder where the parent input is going to take place.
Yeah.
I hope it's not after decisions are made.
No. We are doing a survey, as Diane referenced earlier. We've got a survey we're putting together and getting out, and we will be reaching out to parents as part of this process. I just don't have anything to tell them right now, so I want to be very careful about pulling them in too soon when I really don't have any answers.
So is the survey just focused on remote learning, though?
No, we will be asking them a couple. I actually, and I'll thank Wendy here, she let me know that Gardner had put a survey out, so I was able to get a copy of the Gardner survey. And I'm going to go back to the team that's working, and we're going to rework a few of our questions to mirror what they had asked, because some of the questions they asked were about the returning to school process.
Yeah,
So
I think that is starting to be a big question for parents. So I think it's important to start at least letting them know that there are some things in the works and some, thoughts being put towards that. Reopening.
Get a communication out to parents so that they know that groundwork is being laid, and
I think that'd be good.
out to them. That's a great suggestion.
So what is our role? I mean, when a plan is developed, do we have to approve it, or I just wonder what our role is in that whole thing.
We're in new uncharted territory right now. I don't think there's a simple answer for that.
Wouldn't our role be, if there was a change in school policy, we would have to vote on that. I don't think the superintendent or I think from the trainings we've been through on the school board, if there's a change in school policy, we do have to vote on that.
Right, but so my question, for example, is, okay, this committee's decided that we're going to do half the school one day, half, like every other day for some kids, or mornings, afternoons, so that then they're going to have to do social distancing. Everyone's going to have to wear masks. Does that fall into policy, Sean? I don't know. Is that something we have to vote on? I don't know. There's a lot of I don't knows.
Well, I do have a draft from the state. It's not done. It's not a public document. I apologize for not being able to share it right now, but a lot of the work that we are going to have to put in place is going to actually be mirrored on that document. And I just think it's good policy for you guys to know, because you will get questions about what's going on. So we're getting into a place where we kind of know what it's going to look like. I think you guys need to be involved in that before it goes out to a larger group, like the communities or a parent group and such. But Sean's exactly right. If there's anything that would involve a policy change, it has to come before you guys first. So a lot of what it's going to look like, if we're looking at a plan, a scenario where some are coming to school and some are not coming to school and stuff, that would be a case where I would think we would need to have a special board meeting and have a discussion on that and make sure we have your endorsement of a plan like that, for sure.
Right. And that guidelines that you have from the state, that's not mandates. Those are recommendations. So we can make our own decisions locally, correct?
Very good point. Yes. Again, that local control, that's a huge piece.
Right.
Give guidance, suggestions.
Some of the stuff, like I've been told, like busing, I don't want to, like, there may be some, that's not guidance. That's a mandate when it comes to busing and stuff. Like, I know the federal CDC is actually they actually floated some plans already when it comes to busing, which is like, I figured out my kid's bus run based on that guidance, and I'm like, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to work either right now. I'll be very honest.
53 kids on a bus, and you have to have a kid 6 feet apart. Well, unless they live in the same house.
Every other seat,
And that is such the hard part right now, is there is that element of local control. Then there's the element of health and safety, and places like the CDC who are going to say, if you're going to run a bus, this is the way to do it. But all of that needs to come back to you guys. I'm not going to leave you out of the loop as we go forward. Hopefully that'll ease everyone's mind. But I'm not going to leave you guys out of the loop as to what we're doing. And we will absolutely, if we need a special board meeting just for that, we will absolutely do it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jay.
You're very welcome.
Are you thinking about going back to school 1 and 2 weeks ahead of time?
That's on the table too, though. I've seen some guidance around that as well. I've actually seen guidance the other way too, saying, could you back up your calendar 2 or 3 weeks? So it's just, there's just so many things out there right now. But if we would change the calendar, we'd have to come to you guys for that. So, I mean, you guys will absolutely have to be involved in those kind of decisions.
Well, if you have to be 6 feet apart, like Sean says, some of our classes are not big enough.
Yep. That's all part of the work that we need to do right now is, square footage in a classroom. How many kids can we actually put in a classroom at one time? And that's going to determine a lot of the next steps of so what kind of schedule are we looking at? And our schools are different sizes. Like Manchester, for example, actually has kind of small classrooms for the number of students they have. They have an old building, so the rooms are a little bit smaller, versus like a Wayne, who has, may only have 10 or 11 kids in, and they have a room that's definitely big enough for that. So it may even look different across our schools. It's not going to be one size fits all.
And again, that to me has to involve parents, because parents are going to have to think about, as they're going back to work, daycare for their kids if they're not in school. There's just so many things to think about. But we can't leave anybody out of the loop. Not parents especially, because they're the ones that are calling.
Yeah, absolutely. Rightfully so. Rightfully.
Exactly.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Okay.
So before we make a motion to go into executive session, I'm going to ask Diane, maybe if you could just tell them how that's going to look. And the other thing that, that I would ask the board for kind of permission to do, and Diane can speak to this a little bit about how she's going to manage it, is we need to kind of move in and out of rooms. So I'd like to get the board permission to be able to move to include Diane, because she's going to help us kind of manage this process, but she will mute herself and shut off the audio and all that kind of stuff. And I'll communicate with her via text so that she knows when it's time to move and stuff. But Diane, if you want to talk a little bit about how this process is going to work, then we'll make the motion and go in.
So the executive session is a closed session. So anybody who is not part of the school board will need to, I'll move them into the waiting room, or they can leave, whichever. And I will pause recording, and then I will watch the participant list and make sure that no one accidentally pops in during the executive part of the session. I will mute my audio so I can't listen, but I'm still watching the participant list. Jay will let me know when the executive session is over. I will resume recording, and then if anyone is in the waiting room, I will allow them to come back in to hear the end of the meeting. Does that seem appropriate and okay for the board members?
Yeah, that seems fine.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd like to ask that anyone who is not part of our RSU school board.
Oh, sorry, we got to make the motion to go into executive session first, and then we can
ask them to leave.
All right. I move to go into executive session to consider administrative evaluations pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A for principals Jeff Boston, Dwayne Conway, Janet Delmar, Abby Hartford, Kristen Levesque, Assistant Principal Tina Brackley, Special Education Director Ryan Meeser, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Nancy Harriman. And did you also want me to move to include Diane?
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Diane to be in the executive. Yes.
Executive session to control everything.
Second.
Alex, that was you, right?
No.
Oh,
Babe,
is
Betty.
that, sorry, I was looking down again. All right.
So it's normally just the board members. So
And
you're going to get rid of all these other teachers.
Yes, everybody else, anybody who is not part of the board, if you can leave if you want, and if not, I'm going to move you into the waiting room.
So let's quickly do the roll.
the people,
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, Jay, I'll let you do the roll count.
Yeah, let me do the roll call vote and then we can move people. So Kim,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex. Alex, are you there?
So,
Okay, I'll come
Yep,
back.
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay. Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
yes, and just a question. Any of the principals or directors who want to come in when we're talking about them, are they allowed to come in?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I can have Diane help them get back in if you need them.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean? Yeah, Sean,
Yes.
Gary,
yes.
and David.
Yes.
Perfect.
We've gone through it and we're able to live stream it. Is that what you mean, Kim?
Yeah, so how do you find it? Like, talk to me like I know nothing about technology, because I
Well,
don't.
I kind of know less than you, but well,
Diane, how am I gonna find it?
right. We're gonna send out a link for it
Oh, okay.
once it's all set up. So look for information, really by Monday or Tuesday.
So it's going to go like the school-wide kind of, or
Yeah.
whatever, RSU wide email.
I'm sure
Okay,
I'm sure we'll do it on ThrillShare and on the website.
awesome. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Wendy, I think we're ready for that motion.
Okay, I move to extend all of the administrators' contracts that we have discussed with a 2% raise.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
All right, Kim,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes, with pleasure.
Sean,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes?
and David.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you guys very much.
So we're all done? We'll
We
make a
are
motion to
done.
adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second, yeah.
Have a great evening.
Adios.
Yes, yes.
Thank you
Good
all.
night.